Asking for dyslexic support would make my toes curl. I would tell bosses that I was dyslexic, but then just not ask for any support because I felt so embarrassed. Katie, what about you? Hey, I'm Natalie, and welcome to the Dyslexia in Adults podcast. I believe that dyslexia is holding you back in your career and impacting your daily life, and ultimately slowly chipping away at your confidence. And I just simply don't think that that is good enough. I don't care when you were diagnosed, if your boss is a total dick, or if, like me, you roll your eyes heavily when dyslexia is called a superpower. I know I can change how you feel about your brain.
I don't ever think I was embarrassed. Okay, wait. So I shout from the rooftops that I'm dyslexic. I've told every boss, every coworker, everyone. I say it all the freaking time. But I don't think I've ever actually asked for an accommodation, and not because like I was embarrassed or nervous or worried. I think I just always thought it was my job to figure it out. Um,
Mm.
so like Grammarly, for example, I have purchased Grammarly my entire work existence. And I just have my own subscription, which is great because then I can go look back on things if need be. But for the most part, like I've paid for it. I've never even had an employer offer to pay for it. But I've had
Ahem.
employers. That's not true. You're right. You have offered to pay for it. And I said, no, I'll just keep it. But I think that like they've given me a bajillion complaints about my spelling, but they've never offered to pay to fix the problem. So I don't know. And they knew about Grammarly. What have you, like you said, you haven't really asked for support because you were nervous. What, how have you gotten support without asking?
I think my deeper problem when I was working was not knowing what support I needed. I always shied away from writing roles, so spelling was never really a big problem. You've always done very written heavy roles, so I guess maybe that's part of it, that there's more obvious pieces. I do remember one time going to one company, which by the way is a tech unicorn, so you better believe they have the cash. And I went to the HR department and I said to them, "Oh, I'm dyslexic and I've just made a few small mistakes. You know those kind of like classic careless challenges." And oh, sorry, I can't. You see, it's so internalized the shame. It's not careless. Those dyslexic challenges. Of missing things. I used to really struggle with those, and I went to the HR department and I was like, I'm dyslexic. Do you have any advice on what I could get and what support I could get? And they just flipped it straight back on me and said, will you tell us what you need? And then I Googled it for ages, and the best thing I could come up was Grammarly, but that wasn't the problem, so felt like a waste of time. And then I just pretended I was fine for the rest of that job. Then fast forward 2 years later, started Dyslexia in adults.
Oh my gosh. No, I have so many similar stories to that where the boss doesn't have any idea about dyslexia or like how it impacts people, or so they have no clue about dyslexia to start with. And then after that, they're like, "Oh, we got spell check. You'll be fine. Oh, we'll review your
Honestly,
work. You'll be fine." No, we won't be fine. We'll accidentally send the word food panties out instead of food pantries, even with everyone checking it. Like, no, that's
it
like,
brought you to me. It brought you to me. It was like the best mistake that could have ever happened to you. For anyone that doesn't know the story, Katie sent me a DM one day about that story of saying food panties rather than food pantries. And the rest is history. Now she's stuck with me for life. I know you have said it before about asking for headphones and things like that and getting it denied. What about that kind of thing?
oh, okay. So this one is for my ADHD girlies and guys out there. Headphones are like my personal number one tip. Noise canceling specifically. I think you've told me a story similar to this where you worked in like a pit or in an open office. I worked in like literal cubicles. Like I could roll out of my cubicle and be like, "Hey Dave, hey Jan," roll back into my cubicle, right? So it was a sales job. Well, I was in marketing, but they were all in sales. So it was like, bring, bring, bring. Hello, thank you for calling. Let me help you. Just over and over and over again. So I, day one, got into this office, put on noise canceling headphones, and didn't take them off. But I worked there for like three, five. I worked there for a long time. And one day we were like having an office potluck and I had my headphones on, but like there was nothing going on. I just like went out of my office real quick. I went from the pit to an office that was shared with someone, but it was still loud. And I like went out to grab some food real quick. And then the boss made this like the boss. So not my boss, but the boss's boss, the owner of the company made the snidest comment about like, well, Katie would hear these brilliant ideas if she wasn't always wearing headphones.
Ouch.
I was flabbergasted and I was like, oh, I hear them. And then I just walked back into my office. And then I don't remember what he was asking. It was something silly too. It was like, oh, we should apply to be on this award or something. I don't know. It wasn't important and I didn't miss it. But yes, so headphones are my number one accommodation. But I think the problem in that job was I didn't ask for it as an accommodation. I just did it.
Mm.
Which I mean, I kind of recommend, like, just go for it. But then on the flip side, like, he thought I was being rude when really I was just trying to be productive.
Yeah, I also remember asking for headphones. There's three things that I asked for and didn't see as neurodiverse accommodations, just saw as exactly like you said, I'm Natalie, I'm a nightmare. I have to do these things to be less of a nightmare. And on a subconscious level, I knew they were neurodiversity, but it's just the shame is just it's so real. So headphones I've asked to use before to kind of focus and stay engaged because I've always worked in open plan offices. That got firmly denied. They were like, you're a junior member of staff, you have to like listen to conversations and stuff. And I was like, well, I can listen to the conversations, but that will be all I will be doing. There will be no work done. There will be conversations listened to. I
And then you'll
also
sneak in and join the conversations too. That was my
exactly
problem. Yeah.
even less work done. And then the other one was also, I remember asking to like, we had a desk move and I was put on a busy corridor, the like end of the desk on a busy corridor. And I just watched people walk up and down this corridor. And obviously at this point, I've got undiagnosed ADHD. So I'm just like thriving in shame and just like, why can't I focus? Like, and asked to work in meeting rooms, asked to sit in a different spot, and all of it just got, same as what you were saying, just ridiculed or diminished. And no one gave a damn about like the fact that I was trying my best. It was just, suck it up and get on with it. And then the other one that I actually think about a lot is I remember all of my workplaces, working from home was a perk for senior management. And again, I was just thriving in undiagnosed ADHD shame. So I was just like, oh, I'm just an awful person who can't focus and just a nightmare person. I am the worst. And so never said to someone, I think I would focus better if I had like a quiet spot or being able to work from home. And I just remember trying so hard to get promoted because I wanted to work from home and getting my promotion denied twice. And I didn't even want the money or the title. I just wanted to work from home.
That's wild. But I mean, it's not unheard of. Like I left a job because of it was kind of an internal politics issue, but there were team members in other offices who could work hybrid. The bosses did not, reside in those offices. I worked in the headquarters, and in my specific office, no one was allowed to work from home or do hybrid. And so finally at one point I told my boss, I said, "Look, I had some other stuff, life stuff going on, and I was like, look, I need to work from home. Like I've got too many appointments and I need the focus and I just need to work from home." So they let me do it on a trial basis for about a month and my productivity skyrocketed. It was
Wow.
just hybrid and I was producing so much more for the company. I was bringing in more valuable leads. I was just killing it. And then the big boss called me in and was like, you need to be back in the office. You need to tell us what's going on. And I was like, well, first off, absolutely not. That's a HIPAA violation. And number two, if you're going to force me to be here, I'm going to have to rethink my employment. Cause I had that like magical moment of work from home, which I think most of us post COVID and going through
Mm.
the pandemic are all like, no, no, no. If you have ADHD and dyslexia and autism and like being able to work from home or hybrid, that's my personal favorite, is incredible because you can cater to your needs when you need it. So yeah, I definitely understand the whole like I'm gonna work for the promotion just to work from home. Yeah.
And I also remember that dual screen was one of those things that you had to put a business case in for. I mean, this is a while ago, so I don't think it's actually like this anymore. But I remember dual screens you had to put in a business case for, and I put in a business case for it because I like I said, it helped me answer emails quicker or whatever. Just, what I deemed at the time as a bullshit reason, but wasn't a bullshit reason. It was a dyslexic accommodation. And they denied it. And they were like, oh, only, coders or like, people who are doing like complex work are allowed dual screens. So, your like business case has been denied. But it's just crazy when you think about it. The simple things that we were just trying to do our best and either getting ridiculed or getting denied or just heaping all of that shame on ourselves.
I just think about the amount of money that companies are wasting. So like buying you a monitor, let's say back in the day, what, a $200 like at most.
If that.
Right. So they're going to spend 200, let's say we're going to be real generous. They're giving you a $200 OLED, some kind of fancy monitor. How much money are you going to make the company because you're going to be able to work faster, because you're going to be able to be more diligent. You're not going to make as many like errors in translating numbers from one like tiny screen to the next tiny screen. Like you're saving the company. Like it's not girl math. It's like neurodiversity math.
Yeah.
That's just the way it works. You're saving people money when you get the accommodations you need.
When you think about it, that is just so shocking.
It is absolutely baffling. And here's the crazy part is like our stories are not uncommon. And I'm like, you hear them every day when you're in your DMs and like just the little things that people never ask for or companies deny because you haven't asked for it with like the legal protections.
Or you haven't asked for it in a way that kind of makes them understand the reality. But that's the whole point of this podcast and last week's episode as well, is we want to help you make this easier. And we hope that these stories have kind of given you a little bit of confidence to learn from our mistakes and to do things differently. Because when you look at it and when you hear these stories, you realize how ridiculous the entire thing is. So hopefully you're going to learn from our mistakes.
See you guys in the next one. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Dyslexia in Adults podcast. Whether or not this is your first listen or your 100th, I am so grateful that you decided to entrust me with this challenge. If you enjoyed this week's episode, I would really appreciate it if you could review and subscribe to the podcast because it really helps us to reach more people.